Welcome to Vitals and Values. We're talking about a topic near and dear to my heart. Does your weight define you? And the clinical truth and faith-based perspectives of what your weight actually means.
Very timely, especially given we just finished the 4th of July holiday and I ate too many sweets.
I racked out probably a full pie to myself.
The pie was good.
The pie was good. Nantucket Bakery, shout out to you. You are a unpaid sponsor
Absolutely.
of the podcast.
Cheesecake, pie, and cake balls, all from Nantucket.
All right, so low key, Lara and I decided to hide the cake balls in our room because I was not letting other people take them.
We couldn't finish them all.
We actually did, yeah.
We did have to share. It was great. So all right, anyways, moving along. So we are going into vitals check. So we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind this. So I think to me, the biggest question starting is, what is your weight really, like, what is it actually measuring? Like, why do we even care? And I think when you go into a doctor's office, everyone hates getting on the scale. At least most of my patients do. And when we obviously want to get the weight, the pound number, but the BMI is a big factor in medicine. And I know people have I was going to say a love-hate relationship, but I would say mainly a hate relationship.
I think at this
BMI.
point, it's mostly BMI is like the new villain of everything else. Like that BMI is not accurate. Like don't it's just height and weight.
Yeah. But I have more muscle mass than that. That's what, yeah. So anyways, diving into BMI a little bit more. I did not really know anything about the history of BMI. And it was actually kind of interesting. So it was this like equation. So BMI is your body weight in kilograms divided by your square of height in meters. So that's where you get the BMI. Yeah. And this was developed back in the 30s or 40s by a Belgian mathematician statistician who was studying something in like the population in the Netherlands, I think.
Okay.
And he was trying to find this like ideal man is how it's described, and like using these numbers to get like this ideal person to use for population-based studies. And so he did not create this with the idea that it was going to be used for medicine or for individuals and their health. So that was never how it was created. And the term BMI didn't come into existence. He didn't call it that, but until Ansel Keys started doing research in like the 1970s. So he was, Ansel Keys, they do. Yeah. So he was an American physiologist who did a lot of research in nutrition and in diet and health. And so he started using BMI because he found it as like an easy way to measure health of what he would say it was health of these individuals he was studying. And so he named it BMI. And we've been using it pretty much ever since in medicine. So we use it because it is where we define obesity, overweight, normal weight, and underweight. So we use BMI to define those. And so I have people who are like, get mad in clinic that you're labeling them as obese, but obesity is literally a number based on, like I said, your height and weight. And so like you can't argue it. Like that is the definitions that we have created it to be. And so we have if it's under 18.5, it's considered underweight. 18.5 to 24.9 is considered normal weight. Over or between 25.0 and 29.9 is considered overweight, and then over 30 is going to be obese. So you can't argue the number. That is literally our definition, whether you like it or not. Now, the reason that BMI becomes a villain, as you have said, is because it's not necessarily the most accurate. Like I said, it wasn't designed to be used for individuals, but we are using it that way. And that is how we use it in medicine. And the idea for BMI is that we're trying to get an idea of someone's fat mass. That is kind of why we use it. And so it's used in medicine, I think, because it's easy to measure. It is not complex to weigh people or to measure their height. So it's very easy. It's very fast, and it's very inexpensive. And so there are other ways to measure fat mass, such as DEXA scans. You can do other imaging tests, but those are not cheap. So on a day-to-day basis in a medical clinic, it's very easy to measure BMI. Now, why is it not a great marker to use? Well, it can overestimate the adiposity in people who have a larger muscle mass. So someone like yourself.
Guilty. So My guess, because obviously I haven't done a DEXA scan, I'm right around 22% body fat. And I'm clinically obese I'm a 30.05 or something BMI because I'm 6'1", 235. But because of, just saying, look at these pec dances, I have way more lean muscle mass than the average American. And so it disproportionately puts me at this clinically obese. But when you get in the body fat percentage, I'm normal.
You're doing fine.
I'm fine.
Right. And so in you, it may be overestimating your fat mass, like you said. And then in people like older adults who have a like significant loss of muscle mass and have sarcopenia, it actually is going to be inaccurate in them as well. And so it is not perfect on both spectrums there, but I would say for the average American, it is a somewhat useful indicator of fat mass.
Gotcha.
That would be my argument. It is so if your BMI is between 25 and 40, it's probably beneficial to use other markers as well. So things like waist circumference or hip to waist ratios can be useful. I would say that some offices, medical offices, do use those numbers. Not all do, but that can help kind of identify fat mass and health a little bit better. And why we care about fat mass is, well, there's different types. So we are really trying to identify the visceral fat. And so visceral fat is our very unhealthy fat, and it can contribute to things like diabetes and heart disease and fatty liver disease. And this is the fat that surrounds your organs. So it surrounds your kidneys and your liver and other organs. And that is bad fat. Then there's the fat, what's the term?
Cutaneous.
Thank you. I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? The subcutaneous fat.
My one win of the day.
That is the fat that you can like grab. So when you're like grabbing fat on your body, you may not like that, but that fat is actually not as bad for you as that fat that is internal surrounding your organs. So that is kind of a brief overview of weight, BMI, and some of the pros and cons to that term. Did you have anything else you wanted to add or questions?
No, I mean, it gives good perspective because, like, as we dive into a little more vitals, the importance of like how we identify weight, health, like, and as we get more in the nuance of things, we have to understand that these things like weight, body fat percentage, they're all tools of different capacities that have strengths and weaknesses, cost, use that play into this whole thing. And they're just numbers, guys. So looking down to it. Now, as we kind of break that all down, what does the science say on BMI, on weight, and how that affects health? Like, for example.
Yeah, so we know that BMI in the obese range is going to lead to chronic health problems, right? So it's, I know you particularly hate the, or maybe I shouldn't say, but the health at every size. Is that the movement?
We were definitely going to be talking about that in the next piece.
Okay. So some people will say, no, you can be healthy at any weight, but that's not true. We know that as weight goes up, there is a significant increase in metabolic dysfunction and cardiovascular disease risk. And so we know that that matters. And so that is why we measure these things and care about it. So when your doctor is telling you, hey, your BMI is over 35 or whatever they may say for you, they're telling you that because they know it puts you at risk. They may not explain that super well always, but that is the reason that it's brought up and that why they care about it. We also have to, I think, address too that it's not just overweight, but underweight. So things like anorexia are very dangerous. Anorexia is the mortality rate is the highest of any psychiatric condition. And so it's not just about being overweight, but being underweight is also a big deal. And so that is a part of this as well.
As we kind of break down my go-to strategy when we talk about hard science versus nuance is like, all right, we need to create some barriers that we can all agree on. Like, there is a point where being overweight, regardless of how well you treat your body nutritionally, I eat all organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, mostly fruits and vegetables. If you get to a certain weight, it becomes unhealthy. It increases risks of all-cause mortality, increase the risks of all types of issues. Flip side of the coin, if you are constantly malnourished and anorexic, it puts stress on the heart, it puts stress on all these different things. And so setting the barriers between, guess what? There is a point where overweight is a problem, and there's a point that underweight's a problem. But actually what's kind of fun to know as we get more into context, nuance, the values and focus, there is a lot more balance to what your weight can be in order to be healthy. Because like contrary to popular belief, just because you have six-pack abs doesn't inherently make you healthy, and just because you got a little fluff doesn't make you in a bad position for health, all-cause mortality, illness. And there's a lot of nonsense on the internet of vanity being like, oh, well, if you have abs, you're automatically healthier than someone's not. Well, there are marathon runners that drop dead of heart attacks and they have abs. So let's be careful on that front. So
And I would say too that people people can have a normal BMI and have increased visceral fat, that bad fat, and so be more metabolically unhealthy than someone that has, say, a BMI in the overweight category. That can happen too, and so that's where more of that body composition, which the BMI can't quite identify, comes into play. So just because your BMI is in the normal range does not mean you're metabolically healthy. It's more likely, but it is possible that it's not.
and that's where like weight, BMI, all this kind of stuff is just the cheapest, most efficient way to start figuring out where the person's at so that you can move in a direction to help this person. Because as we'll kind of go into it, more on like the haze, healthy at every size, where the weight kind of stigma comes from. I guess obviously as we kind of, because is there any more in like vitals check of like hard science you want to kind of hit on?
That was the stuff that I was planning to talk about. So I think if you want to move to values and focus, that'd be fine.
Yeah, because the big ones just kind of the checkpoints, like obviously what is weight? Your weight is every metric of your body. That's tissue, body fat, muscle, bone, water. All of this makes up your weight. So while yes, weight starts moving in a direction of one of the perspectives of health, it's not the only one. And there are limits. How overweight you can be before it becomes unhealthy, and how underweight you can be before it becomes unhealthy. But as we kind of pivot, like more into the idea of like your weight, one of the things I always want to hit on early is like my story of just being 400 plus pounds. Like I truly believed that being overweight was who I was. Like I was going to see the endocrinologist, obviously, talk about my TED Talk and other places. I had an endocrinologist literally tell me, David, these might just be the cards you were dealt. We may be able to put you in the Sahara Desert and you may not lose weight. And so I had this belief that like being 400 plus pounds was who I was as a person. And as you unpack it, 10 years plus down 200 pounds, it's just a set of habits, patterns, and beliefs. Now we can go into the genetics of hunger and how that affects calories and all this kind of stuff. But one of the biggest shifts that can help so many people that struggle with, in the sense of like obesity, is understanding it's not who you are. It doesn't have your value as a person. And just because you are in a leaner body or in a bigger body, your value of a person doesn't change. Your experiences of the quality of life can change, and the quality of life and the longevity of that life can change. But constantly, people get caught in this stigma that, I mean, don't kid yourself. I'm not perfect with it, but you create this identity that, well, once I hit 220, I'll be happy, everything's gonna be great. And they create this transactional period where I don't love myself, I don't respect myself till I hit some arbitrary number on the scale. And contrary to popular belief, when I was 400 plus pounds, I set this goal of I just want to be 220. And like I set that goal early. It's funny how many people who are like 6 foot, they go 220 is my goal.
Is that's the
It's like
magic number?
it seems like that's the magic number for a lot of people who are overweight. And you hit that number and it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of different types of 220. You can do basically eat no protein, don't strength train, be 220 and still have a lot of fat on your body and have relatively low muscle tone. And then there are other people who I'm over 220. People look at me and they think I'm like 215 and I'm 235 because the amount of muscle mass to relatively leanness I am, people don't expect that I'm 235.
Well, I feel like I had a hard time, or it took me a long time to understand that too, that because I think so many people focus on just the scale, but it is so much body composition that people are actually looking for. I think they want to look better. So they think if they get to that whatever magic lower number on the scale, then poof, they'll have the body they want. But really, that's the weight is not the only thing. You have to think about your muscle mass versus your fat mass and all that composition part. And like, so I dealt with that at a time where I was much thinner when I was a runner. And I think it goes into kind of what you were saying, that about kind of that identity piece. And I think a lot of runners in particular have this. They're like, I have to be thin to perform better and I have to be at this weight. And that becomes your identity as a runner. And for so many years, that's all I did. And I thought I had to stay at a certain weight. And like you said, I thought, if I keep this weight, it'll make me happier. But it didn't. And when I finally got through that and actually gained weight, I found that I was happier and healthier. And I realized that my identity didn't have to be that small, thin runner. And that actually was very freeing.
100%. Well, because it's like I deal with it constantly where, again, your weight is one of the most simple, sustainable tools of tracking progress that you can track on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't cost you much. It doesn't tell you everything, but at least it can start to put on barriers. Because contrary to popular belief, I'm in the National Obesity Transformation Registry, or whatever it's called, where like if you've kept off more than like 70 pounds for more than like 4 years, you get put in this registry with a few thousand people, and they send you questionnaires, and they're trying to find what are the causality variables and all this kind of stuff. And this is going to frustrate some dietitians that lean towards haze and intuitive eating and all this kind of stuff because structure is bad. One of the main strategies for long-term sustainable weight loss
is it tracking?
Averaging at least a weekly weigh-in.
Weigh-in. Okay.
Because because if you have hunger issues and obesity issues, if you don't have something objective kind of holding you in check, if I just didn't, I step on the scale at least 3 times a week. When I'm really on, it's every morning. Like but I would say on average in a 365-day year, I step on the scale 3 days a week. And am I obsessed over it? No. I went through a phase where like that was a position. But now it's like I kind of set the barrier that as long as I'm sitting somewhere between 205 and 240, my blood work's fine, my blood pressure's fine. I creep above 240, my blood pressure starts creeping, and like I gotta get that in check. But it's just one of the easiest ways to keep yourself accountable. And don't kid yourself, BMI. Weight isn't everything, but it is so funny to me, the people who scream victim of BMI are metabolically unhealthy regardless. Like they do not have excessive lean muscle mass. They are not working out 6 days a week. They are not doing everything like on the highest level.
They're trying to come up with an excuse, right?
They're trying to justify it. Like, and I get it. I did the same thing, but it just doesn't actually serve you. And like, that's what's super important as we get into some of the harsh realities of your weight, your body fat percentage, your body composition. It is one heck of a marker for your general health and well-being. And there's no way around it. And like, obviously treating your body as a temple and stewarding your body, it is important to understand being overweight, extremely overweight or underweight is an issue. We can go, what's great is actually the more and more we're looking at clinical research, the more and more we're finding out there is more nuance to what a healthy body weight percentage looks like, body fat percentage. And like generally for men, if they're in between 12 and 24%, as long as they're working out and have a generally healthy lifestyle, prioritizing fruits and vegetables, doing these things, there isn't a big issue. That 12 to 24% body fat percentage, that is a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
And so huge range. And so that's great. Like you can have a lot more than you think as long as you create balance, but there are limitations. And now like from a diet culture lens, you get these intuitive eaters, like these RDs. I've had battles with them because it goes to the extreme opposite degree of haze. And I think like that whole process of health, there's 2 terms and they get kind of pulled together. There's health at every size and there's healthy at every size. Okay. Healthy at every size is the mantra that like we shouldn't shame someone who's overweight in working out, making better nutritional decisions, all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. Like it is fascinating to me how people judge somebody going to the gym who's overweight. Like it's just like wait, so you mock and judge them for not working out,
when they're
But
at
then
the
they start,
gym.
but they're at the gym overweight working out and you're mocking them and judging them.
I know, way to
There's no
encourage,
winning.
right?
Yeah, there's no winning there. So from a healthy at every size perspective of like doing healthy habits regardless of your size, great message. Health at every size, where now these registered dietitians, some different people are saying that obese people can be clinically healthy. The data is just not there. It's just not. All-cause mortality increase, all the different disease state increases. It's just not true. You can still treat these. You can still treat yourself and others with respect and dignity. But the idea that you can be healthy at any weight and all this, it's just not true. It's just not.
Now you mentioned stewarding your body. What does that mean to you?
It's just in general treating your body with the respect it deserves. And what's nice about that, when you come from a nutritious lens, a respectful lens, and not a fear-based lens, it gives you context and nuance. Like you can still have some chocolate cake and some pie and some things, and be a little bit overweight for the sake of quality of life. But it also means there are limitations, and guess what? You got to treat your body with the respect it deserves. And one of the most loving and respectful things you can do is creating a nice, realistic barrier of weight that keeps you in check, so you don't increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and blood pressure problems and all this pre-diabetes and stuff like that. So like stewarding a proper health is like, guess what? God gave you this body. It's one body. Love it and respect it.
Right. Because, yeah, that's what we're called to do, right? We were given this body, and like you said, God wants us to take care of it. And I think it says that a lot in the Bible. It even says physical training is good for the body. It's not everything, but it all is important. Now, I think that can go sideways.
I may have get this quote wrong.
What?
Just that whole point, and like sometimes as iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. And going into your identity and weight and stigma and where the data really is and how do we go about this, it is weird to me that weight has gone the opposite pendulum, where now it's like, have you ever gotten it? I've been seeing on social media where you get a card, people are giving cards to doctors that say, unless my weight directly affects your care, don't talk about it.
I haven't seen the cards,
You
but
haven't
the
seen cards?
concept, yes.
Yeah. And so it's like these people get triggered by their weight
Yeah.
and all this kind of stuff. And it's like one of the most loving and respectful and empathetic things you can do is understand, obviously, how you do it really matters. But just like you shouldn't coddle and dismiss drug abuse, alcoholism, all this kind of stuff. We've kind of put being obese or underweight in this weird topic of like, it shouldn't be talked about ever, leave it alone. And it's like, if you love a family member and you see them, they're morbidly obese, letting them just kind of wallow in it, it doesn't help them. Like that's more like, I think sometimes one of the most empathetic and loving things you can do is in a supportive way that, hey, again, like this whole topic, or your weight, your identity and value is not in your weight, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Like you go to a friend or family member and say, I love you regardless of your size. But I love you so much that I understand that being considerably overweight or underweight is an issue, and it leads to a lower life expectancy, a lower quality of life, a lower quality of health. And I love you so much as a person. It's not because I think you are somehow less than, but from a health perspective, you're leading yourself down a road that leads to problems. And so, but we've done this weird thing with weight now where it's like we've gone from like in the 90s, it was like shaming everybody, like you're a lazy POS, all this kind of stuff. And now we've gone the opposite perspective, which is like, you just shouldn't talk about it. Like, yeah, Billy's 187 pounds overweight, but he's still an amazing person. Well,
No,
he could be an amazing person and understand that his weight matters.
I see your point. I also think there are, like, I've had patients that have had eating disorders in the past, and they are very triggered by their weight. And so they do not want to see their number when they come into our office. And so we just make note of that. And we still weigh them, but we have them turn around. We don't tell them what it is because it still matters to us as the provider about caring for our patients and making sure they're healthy. But if they don't want to know that number, I think that's totally fine. And I think
True.
you have to know where people are coming from before you just like start talking about their weight. And so I am okay not bringing it up in specific detail to certain patients who find it triggering. And I do think that, especially for things like knee pain or back pain, patients get so sick of the doctor saying, well, it's probably your weight. And I can understand that's very annoying. It's still true, people, but I do try not to make that the main focus of some of my topics with patients because they know their weight's too high. And so like always like pointing that out, I don't think is helpful because I've seen patients, if you bring up their weight, they just shut down and they do not want to talk to you anymore. And will they come back to see you? Questionable. And so you do have to build that kind of rapport with a patient so that they trust you and know that you're not just going to throw their weight in their face every time they come into the office.
Yeah, and it's like shame versus stewardship. And like, I hate to say it, both have merit. Like I have like I don't think shame works for most people.
No.
There is a population that it
not work
does,
for
and
me.
it's fascinating.
Don't shame me.
Well, like I have a buddy of mine who lost 200 pounds, reverses insulin resistance. He had, I don't remember all the details of his medical problems, but lived in Miami. He was a real estate agent, and he went to his cardiologist, and he's 200 pounds overweight. He's like 400 plus, all jacked up medically. And this cardiologist goes to him and says, "Hey, do you have any kids?" And my buddy goes, "Yeah, I have a son." And he goes, "You effed up your life. Don't F up your kids." And that shame, like kind of direct, it scared the crap out of him so much. He dropped 200 pounds, and he's been down 200 pounds for over like 5 or 6 years now. And again,
It could
I
go
don't
the
think,
other way.
yeah, I think it goes both directions, but like, but I would say for most people, because actually I lean the opposite, which is pain, ridicule, shame can get you moving. It can't sustain you.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain point where as you lose weight and as you build a better, healthier and happier version of you, that like that emotional trigger of like, I hate where I'm at, I hate the person I am, I hate this, I hate that, you start to be like, I kind of like the person I am now. And then it's like, well, I only know hating myself, so they don't know how to create sustainability. So what ends up happening, these people self-destruct,
Right.
they gain it back, they hate themselves, and they do the same revolving door over and over again. And it's like loving yourself enough to treat your body with the respect it deserves, from my point of view, leads to way better sustainable outcomes. I think the pain model and shame is like gasoline. It can get people fired up and all this kind of stuff.
It burns out.
It just burns out.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't last.
Where do you think vanity plays into this?
Vanity from weight?
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like a lot of people try to maintain a healthy weight, not because they think it's healthy, but because they want to look a certain way, and it really doesn't play like the health benefits are not their main focus.
Yeah, I think, and that's why like for example, with weight, I've given myself a 205 to 240 buffer. Anywhere in there from a medical lens, from at least from a blood work perspective, everything else, I'm fine. So as long as I keep those barriers up, I have vanity within those 30 pounds. Do I want to have a little more abs showing? Do I want not have abs showing? And that's fine. I think when it becomes an issue is because if it, number one, it turns into an emotional fear-based game where your identity is now, your self-worth is, yes, you're creating a self-worth of evaluation problem where it's like, if I don't have abs, I'm not worthy of a significant other. I'm not worthy of, oh my gosh, there's so many of these freaking gym bro motivational business speakers out there. Andy Elliott, for example, he's a jabroni. Like this man's like, he's in car sales, and he's like, if you don't have abs, you're gonna be a broke piece of shit your whole life. And I'm sitting there going like, look at the man, look at your sales guy next to you. If he doesn't have abs, I can guarantee he makes no money. And it's just like, that's such nonsense shaming BS. And it's like, but like people
people respond to it
Well,
apparently.
they get excited,
Oh.
but do they actually? Yeah, he's a
He's a
jabroni.
car salesman?
He's like a car. It's a whole thing. Yeah, I met him once. Was not impressed. Yeah, sorry, Andy. You're kind of a tool.
So I think what we're trying to say too is your value is not determined by your weight.
Yeah,
And there's a lot that goes into that.
and like that's the whole point. Like, yeah, so just understanding, and there's nothing wrong with vanity, like to a perspective, as long as it doesn't affect your quality of health or quality of self-worth. That's where it becomes an issue.
And I think if that is truly your main focus, I think it's going to be harder to be sustainable personally, because your looks they're always going to change and you will age. And so if all you have is your main goals with your weight are focused on the looks alone, you're going to lose it over time.
Now here's a question from your lens. Weight bias
Yeah.
in medicine. How much of it is fluff and how much of it do you think is real? Like, and let me define weight bias, where doctors are underdiagnosing people because they're considerably overweight and it's harming their health because they can't look past the size of someone's body. Like, so they're not doing they're not doing tests, they're not doing interventions.
Well, I've looked into this a little bit, the research, and there is research to support that there is some weight bias in medicine. Now, there's a difference between implicit bias and explicit bias. Like, not everyone in medicine who has a little bit of bias is doing it intentionally. Like, there is some of these like inner workings that kind of come out and manifest as weight bias without you even realizing it. And so I think that does exist. Now, I think sometimes patients think what's happening is weight bias and it's not really. So for example, I had a prior patient who would come in with her husband and she needed knee replacement. Like, she really did need knee replacement surgery quite bad. She had terrible arthritis. And they had moved from Florida. They had moved to Grand Rapids expecting to get knee replacement when they moved here. And the answer was no, you can't have it because your BMI is too high. And the husband was furious that no one would do knee replacement on this patient because of her weight. And that just like infuriated him. And so the struggle was just trying to get her weight down, how to get her weight down. But he would say she can't exercise because her knees hurt. And, it's this back and forth. And she really struggled with it. And he saw this as weight bias. Whereas the surgeon who said no to surgery sees this as, we know that there are risks of doing surgery on someone with a higher BMI. And we do not want to take those risks for a variety of reasons. And so is that weight bias?
And my angle there is it's a harsh reality. Like that's where I try to play on both sides, where it's like, is this fat phobia? Is this weight bias? Or is this just a harsh reality? And it's the same thing when it comes to a medical lens. How I don't care if you're seeing your primary, an endocrinologist, a surgeon, a cardiologist, a nephrologist, any ologist, you pretty much could say, the amount of systemic damage being considerably overweight does to pretty much every single organ system in the body. It's just a reality that if you lost 10, 15% of body weight, you don't even have to lose 30.
Usually
But
a huge number.
let's just be honest here. 30 plus percent of Americans are clinically obese. It's not because they have a lot of lean muscle mass.
No.
It's just not the case. Now, that's where like BMI and weight isn't everything, and you need to be able to detach yourself and go, all right, is it reasonable with this individual? And that's where like discernment from a medical professional matters. But nowadays, every person goes into the medical office going, if this doctor talks about my weight, it's because they're fat phobic and they have a bias towards overweight people.
And like from a surgical standpoint, healing is a lot worse when you are significantly obese. So doctors try to do no harm. And so if they think that the risks of doing surgery outweigh the benefits of surgery, they're not going to do it.
Especially when it's elective.
Right. And so it was a tough situation. I mean, I felt bad for this patient. I feel very bad for her, but I understand the surgeon's perspective as well. And just it's a hard situation to be in.
Now, as we kind of break down, do you have any from your lens of like different talking points?
For what?
For like the kind of like round table, like any discussion points?
That we're moving on.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah, well, one thing that I always see when I have patients come in who want to lose weight and are trying different things is that, they're trying to exercise better, they're trying to eat healthier, and it's like they're punishing themselves and they hate what they're doing. And I just think people need to turn that around because it's not going to be sustainable. If you hate the exercise you're doing, you hate the nutrition you're doing, it's never going to last. And so I think people need to kind of look at weight loss from a different perspective and say, what are the things I can do? What are the things I'm able to do? What are the things that I can eat in order to lose weight? And I think that can be very helpful because if you're punishing yourself every day, you're not going to be successful.
Let me give you a fun story. I don't think I've ever told you this story. So I went through the shame, pain, punishment sequence. Don't kid yourself. Being down, like working through obesity and being down 200 pounds for over a decade, you get caught up in diet culture from time to time. I'm not perfect. Like I fluctuate 30 to 40 pounds still to this day because there is the argument that obesity is a genetic disease that has long-term issues. And so there is unfair situations that I'm put in that some people don't struggle with. But guys, skip this phase. This was back in like the low carb, keto, all that phase early on in my weight loss. I believed in like the cheat days and all that kind of stuff. And then the shame and transition over. And it was a normal pattern for me. I'd say at least a monthly average where I would have a ridiculous binge. And then to justify it, I'd run like 6, 7, 8, 9 miles the next day and literally not eat the whole day. And then I'd try to get back on track and then I'd binge again. And he created this constant revolving door, and like the calorie swings I would go through because of that, way worse than what I currently do now, which is like, all right, I overate yesterday. Cool. Back to routine.
Yeah.
Hit my calorie goal, hit my protein goal, maybe add 3 to 5,000 steps, but nothing crazy. But like using this shame model for long term, like thinking that's going to be successful, that you messed up, so you're now going to punish yourself by starving yourself and doing a bunch of cardio, it doesn't work. Like it just leads people to this constant volatility, and you get so emotionally drained by it that eventually you just quit. Like it doesn't work.
I mean, so from the other side, I used to not eat enough. And I didn't know this for a time, but I was constantly thinking about food, right? Because if you're not eating enough, what does your brain do? It tells you have to eat. So I'm constantly thinking about food. And so it would be hard when I would go to an event or a holiday and there's all this food sitting out in front of you that you don't typically eat, chips and pie and all these things. And it would be so hard for me to stop eating that stuff once I started because on the regular, I wasn't eating enough. So my brain was just like, eat, 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 eat.
Yep.
And then I would do the same thing as you. The next day, I'd be like, I'm not eating anything. And then I would get back. Now that I'm in a much better routine about my eating, I'm not under eating. I don't think about food the same way. When I go to an event, I don't have these thoughts of like, I must eat all this food right now. I can't stop. And if I do eat a little bit more than I normally do, like 4th of July, then I just whatever the next day, you just go back to your routine and getting back on a routine and habits, which I think we're talking about next time. I think that's like the most helpful thing.
Oh yeah, because what you resist persists, and that whole idea of like you have this fear and angst towards certain foods. This is why I'm not a huge fan of like saying food addiction and all this kind of stuff. Like you can make the comment of like poor relationship with food and everything, but like when you give it more power than it needs to have, and you create this like bad, eventually when you binge, you go nuts. And it's funny to me because I've been able to I'm in a position now where my swings are not nearly as extreme as what they used to be, and I maintain a leaner physique more sustainably by actually eating more cookie. You bake
You're
you bake pretty delicious food, and especially baked goods, and I eat more now of them than I did
okay, but let's
5
be
years
real.
ago.
I hardly bake anything for you because I don't want to tempt you when you're
Yeah.
trying to eat healthy. It's just on the holidays.
Yeah, it's just the holidays.
You should have met me 5 years ago. My baked good production was significantly higher. I keep it in check
But
now.
you keep it in check, but also it goes to show you the here you are stronger and in a better position now. And you're actually, since you're not creating this obsession around it, you don't have the volatility
It's true.
nearly as much and the obsession towards it. People get this obsession because it's that shame-based, fear-based mentality, which is like, no, I'm going to fuel my body for 90% and I'm going to indulge a little bit. And it changes your entire binge behavior, your relationship with food, your relationship with your body and your weight. Huge shifts can
It
happen.
makes it so easier, and you can really enjoy yourself
Yeah.
on holidays without like constantly thinking about I can't overeat, I can't overeat, I can't overeat. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah. I overate this weekend. Not a big deal. Back on routine.
Absolutely.
So key takeaways, I think one of the big ones when it comes to your weight, your identity with your weight, number one is understanding that your weight is just one piece of who you are. Your character, your moral compass, your relationship with God, your relationship with friends and family, all of this stuff makes up who you are as a person. Your body and your weight is one. Because I'm not a fan of taking it off the table. Like, it doesn't matter.
It does
It
matter.
matters. It's not the only thing that matters. And that's what will change your whole perspective, is allowing it to play a piece, but not as you as a whole. As we break down weight, and when push comes to shove, stepping on the scale once a week, whatever, I'm a huge advocate of figuring out a way to track body fat percentage, whether that's an electric impedance monitor, a DEXA scan if you financially can afford. Like, that's crazy how expensive they are. Whatever it may be, tracking more metrics than just weight, so you can get body fat percentage, lean muscle mass growth. Progress pictures is another great strategy, because you look at yourself in the mirror between 6 months and you may not notice the difference. But if you have a picture of yourself from 6 months ago and a picture of yourself from yesterday, you're like, wow, this is really cool. Look at my face and my neck, and this is what I'm doing it for. And so creating more ways to get a more realistic look of your weight can help you with not creating this crazy delusional look of your body.
And do it because you love your body, not because you're trying to punish or you hate what your body is. Look at it on that positive.
Yeah, because you're strengthening it, you're giving it resilience. I'm punishing myself to 205.
Don't do it.
Whatever the
Don't
number
do
is.
it.
Just good luck maintaining it.
Yeah. Great. Anything else?
That's everything I want to get across from me.
Fantastic.
Well, hey, if this episode helped you, share it with someone struggling with the same things that you got. A lot of us struggle with weight, stigma, and this whole process. If there's any types of content you would like to hear from us, comment down below, DM Lara, DM myself. I've been getting a lot of messagings from different people on different episode topics.
We
A
want
couple
your
of them are
feedback.
really dry, so I don't know. There's someone that reached out to me that wants us to do an episode on how to read clinical research.
Ooh.
As much as I want to do that, I don't know how many people could make it through an
I mean,
episode.
it's an important topic.
It is an
However-
important topip. We'll see. Like, I think at some point, Scampo, you're a great guy. You want to learn. I get it.
Maybe we could put out like a
How-to guide
yeah, or
on the other
something.
side. Yeah. And because a lot of people get duped on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this clinical study, that was in rats, and it gave the equivalent dosaging of 50 cans of Diet Coke per day or whatever. Actually, it was more than that.
But it's not done in humans.
It's an in vitro study. In vitro studies are notorious for dosaging issues.
But we digress.
But I digress.
And remember, none of this is medical advice, so seek your own professional physician if you need help.
Definitely. Well, beautiful people, have a phenomenal day, and we will talk to you shortly.
Bye.
Bye.